to understand how they specifically cited the case of Southern West Africa in particular, and that given the question of Southern Cameroon, because this ongoing genocide in Southern Cameroon is not an isolated event. It's not an isolated event. Just imagine, because I emphasize key areas, that just imagine the incidents where a little baby was shot point blank by the military of La Republique du Cameroun in their own vehicle. A military, an occupational military, shot a little baby point blank in her mother's car that the child was heading to school, simply on 500 francs CFA, which is not equivalent to $1 US, and the child was shot point blank. I have been looking through all the various embassies in neighboring country like Republique du Cameroon, including my own embassy, the United States Embassy. None of them has issued a condemnation. I know, first of all, US don't have an ambassador in Cameroon at the moment. US doesn't have an ambassador. Well, so they have something they call attaché. And so that attaché, I don't know, whatever it is, but for sure, US doesn't have an ambassador to the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroon. And that is why it is not an isolated event. So the current, whatever attaché is romancing with the system, with La Republique. And that is why you can't even heard about them, issued a condemnations. And I imagine that if there was an ambassador, then there would have been something. But unfortunately, since US doesn't have an ambassador in the neighboring country like Republique du Cameroon, so they have something they call attaché. And I'm kind of wondering what leadership does she command in US embassy that she can't even articulate. I don't think anyone, a US citizen, is afraid to speak up, whatever they are, even in Russia, where they have one of the highest competing military, US will speak up. But unfortunately, that's a bizarre that I see that, of course, since they don't have an ambassador, you don't expect someone to speak up. But whatever happened to be there should have raised her voice. But unfortunately, she is romancing with the La Republique system. And that is why they bring to the topic, does US have an ambassador? Of course, US doesn't. And because I am proud of the United States, that the United States can stand, if any citizen of the United States can stand anywhere and speak without fear or favor. Because the United States has the might and the capability to stand and speak wherever they are, irrespective of the consequences. But it was very unfortunate that I see a vacancy in La Republique du Cameroon, that the US has no ambassador level, and then there's no one to stand up and speak up on behalf of the United States. It is not just the incidents that a little child was shot in her own vehicle. There is ongoing burning, roasting of homes in Southern Cameroon. As I'm speaking, there is an ongoing roasting of homes, burning people in their homes as I speak throughout Southern Cameroon. Now, this brings us to do we really have to have La Republique du Cameroun in our mercy? Is it because it is an Africa? Of course, that is now boiled down to the CNN reporter or analyst that specifically emphasize that the international community care little or less about West Africa, and that they happen to be non-event to them. And so therefore, the burning and roasting of homes is an ongoing from Donald Trump's administration to the current U.S. administration. Well, one will agree with me that Trump's administration take an extra mile. One, suspend trade embargo with La Republique du Cameroun. Two, suspend military aid to La Republique du Cameroun. Three, prevent any action. And that is the action taken by the previous administration. And yet, we're still wondering what is Biden's administration is going to take on this brutal regime in West Africa. First, the U.S. Secretary of State in his confirmation hearing, he gives a clear indirect directions as one expects the foreign policy of the United States. Since the confirmation hearing of the U.S. Secretary of State, he has went muted. He has not spoken. He has not even mentioned in one of his speech. Of course, he remained clueless as though he is not even aware of what he spoke about. And yet, the genocide continued. Well, one may ask, is it an obligation that the United States must engage? Of course, being a superpower, it is an obligation that the United States can do something and prevent human cleansing in West Africa. That you imagine, we have our people here. We're living here in these great, amazing nations. We live here, we work here, we happen to enjoy the benefit here. But when we watch our people being slaughtered by an occupational military that it shouldn't have been there in the first place, just because it happens that it is an Africa, it doesn't matter, especially people of the black race. And now, so what should our people do when we are screaming, crying? People are fighting. They're fighting because the injustice that landed upon the people of Southern Cameroon forced them to live under the umbrella of a foreign occupation force. Let me look. Of course, now this gives the impression that except you have the nuclear weapons, then you will not be recognized. Except you have the military might, you will not be recognized. And that draws the attention that every nation now start preparing for their own nuclear arsenal so that you can be able to compete, so that you can be put into the center of discussion. Because when we watch our people being neglected by international community as though they are not live, they are not souls, and so they can be slaughtered at will. Imagine this was happening in France. Imagine this was happening in Belgium. Imagine this was happening in UK. Imagine this was happening in Poland. Imagine this was happening in any of the European nations, Germany. It would have drawn condemnation and the military might of all the supreme nations. But however, since it is an Africa, it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter them to speak up. Imagine that the Secretary of State of the United States make a phone call and call Yaoundé 24 hours and ask Yaoundé to pull its military forces. It will happen less than 24 hours and it will make a significant difference to the lives and people of Southern Cameroon, whom they are suffering under the occupation forces of La Republique du Cameroun. Of course, one said the policy of non-intervention. Now that goes now to the point of policy of non-interventions. In fact, if we are to talk about the policy of non-interventions, then we need to draw back to the timetable. Is La Republique merit to be the occupying force of Southern Cameroon? It is an injustice. If the population of Southern Cameroon is more than the population of Equatorial Guinea, then you will agree with me that the people of Southern Cameroon were deprived the right and privilege to exist as a sovereign nation. And now they become the slaughtering house. They become the slaughtering house. Is it not bias? Is it not bias to watch? Is it not bias for international community? The United Nations Resolution 1514 called for decolonizations. It called for decolonization. There is one thing I want to make clear. By no means I deprive the suffering of the people of Biafra. The people of Biafra and the Southern Cameroon questions are not unanimously the same. There are great distinctions between the question of Southern Cameroon and the question of the Biafra. They are not unanimously the same. And in no means do I not acknowledge the destruction of the people of Biafra. But however, their question and the Southern Cameroon questions are not unanimously the same. While they may all stood for their sovereign identity, the people of Southern Cameroon question is unanimously not identical with the Biafra questions. There are some individuals within us that advocate that they stood with the Biafra. Of course, you can stand with the Biafra, but unanimously, the people of Southern Cameroon question is not unanimously the same with the Biafra question. Now, the distinction, the great differences that existed between the Southern Cameroon question and the Biafra is that why in 1960, when the British government tabled Nigeria to the United Nations as an acceptance implementing the United Nations Resolution 1514 XV of decolonizations, the people of Biafra was part of Nigeria, whereas the Southern Cameroon question, the people of Southern Cameroon was not part of La Republique du Cameroun. Therefore, the people of Southern Cameroon was an injustice made upon them by the British administering authority. And yet, they rested in Yaoundé, in La Republique nation's capital, muted, silent, as though nothing is happening, as though they are not aware of reality. The UK government, if the UK government can allow its part to organize a referendum, we don't need a referendum because it wasn't, La Republique wasn't part of us. But however, Canada has organized a referendum on Quebec twice and failed. UK has and failed. UK, whatever you call it, Jerry Adam stood and failed. Why is it that UK government remain muted? Why is it that UK government remain muted as though they are not fully aware? Of course, you see the pidgin ambassador of the British in neighboring country La Republique du Cameroun. He wears the traditional regalia of the people of Southern Cameroon, showing that he is in support. But after when he traveled to the neighboring country La Republique du Cameroun, he remained muted, silent, as though he's not incoherent of the fact and reality. Imagine our people being burned down in their home. That La Republique du Cameroun has never provided assistance, financial assistance. Our people are being burned down by the occupational Republique du Cameroun that has never provided a subsistent financial assistance to the Southern Cameroon territory. These are elderly people that have managed during their years of struggling, are able to sacrifice their own money and able to build a little hut that they call a home, and they are now inhabited peacefully. And the occupational force of La Republique du Cameroun has the audacity and burning those homes in their home, in their territory. La Republique owns zero. La Republique owns zero. And yet, you have the international community remain muted. Then now, imagine if it was happening in France. Imagine it was happening in Belgium. Imagine it was happening in Germany. Imagine, because it is African race, imagine it was happening in Poland. Imagine it was happening in any of the European countries. It would have been an emergency session to discuss the matter. But because it is people of the black race, it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter. Of course, as we speak, the third in making decisions, the key decisions. I am still asking the United States. Of course, the United States will support Europe. But in fact, let's look at historical facts. When the United States was fighting against its freedom, against the very UK that caused atrocity in the people of Southern Cameroon, when the United States was fighting against the UK, no taxation without a representation. The first nation to recognize the United States as a distinctive sovereign nation is posted at the United States Department of State that the first nation to recognize them was the Kingdom of Morocco. If the Kingdom of Morocco recognized the freedom of the United States, the first, why is it so hard that the United States cannot recognize the people of Southern Cameroon? That the United States knows fully well that it was a fraud made upon the people of Southern Cameroon, deprived them their freedom to exist as a sovereign nation. Of course, the British government argued on the stupid fact that we, the people of Southern Cameroon, did not have the economic capacity. The economic potential of Southern Cameroon is more than the economic potential of La Republique du Cameroun. And yet, the UK misguided judgment and argument that doesn't hold. Fellow brothers and sisters, this line of argument tomorrow. So join me tomorrow for this very line of argument. And I wish you all a happy good night.